Do either of you, it's kind of a downbeat kind of question, and I'll start with you, Rick. Were there any losers in terms of the financial industry over these last almost 4 decades?
Not losers like you would see what happened in the United States, Europe. Pick your banking sector. I'm using banking sectors as a reference. And then what happened afterwards and whatever. And I was always, I was on these international committees and whatever, and dealt with the top 50 bank CEOs all the time and whatever. And I was stunned that nobody asked us why the Canadian record was so good. How did the Canadians survive? Because I don't think there's a major banking sector in the world that survived as well as the Canadian, without doubt. And at least in my opinion in that. And it was a combination of things, and the acquisition of the investment dealers and the securities was definitely a big part of it. And while I guess my patience was taxed that why aren't we moving quicker to get synergies and whatever, there were also other things. But we eventually got there to become one of not only the safest banking sectors in the world, but also one of the most profitable. So if you look at the return to shareholders, Howard Green's not here, but he used to always criticize me why you make too much money. And David Wilson isn't here, and as you know, the banks in the prospectuses give you who the 5 most people in the bank is, and David, a guy Meyer, eventually went on to be head of the SEC, would always show up as way ahead because of the remuneration, and I said, well, just catch up, because from the day one, anyone I could, I took equity in the bank, and because of the McLeod and the dealers, that was possible. In the old days, you weren't supposed to take equity in a bank. Now, I gave up cash, the cash salary or whatever you want to call it. So I'm a great one on behavior and what the incentives are on behavior. And so I think this all gets us back, both the dealers and the banks coming together, which the start was the little bank, has served us well. Could we have improved? Certainly. But when we see the net result today or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, name me a major financial institution that has become, we call what you want, universal bank, which has not had a crisis. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had crises, but not to anywhere the degree. I mean, there's crises all the time, but who successfully survived with really not much damage is the Canadian. And yet, when I was in these international committees, these CEOs, they just were, they did not. Why wouldn't they come up and say, well, wow, how come you guys in Canada did so good? So we need Joe Martins and historical and business and meetings like this, because to record that. Why? History is important. I truly believe history repeats itself. You look around today at the chaos of what's happening, the relationships that are being broken and what have you. But I don't worry. I'm still a relatively large and certainly the foundation shareholder in Canadian banks. I may have diversified myself a little bit and not just had Scotia, maybe even taking on
a little RY in your portfolio.
What are these ETFs? You can take them all. Anyhow, a long answer to a question, but the question is still out there. So managements change and go through that, but our record is undoubtedly one of the best, if not the best. We didn't go through a Lehman Brothers. You can go on and on.
Yeah, we certainly punched above our weight during the financial crisis as a size.
Yeah, I guess, first of all, if you ask for any losers, I remember the weekend when we sold Rich Green, and I was driving out to the cottage that Friday night and listening to Tom, I've got a mental block on his name, singing "It's Good to Be King" and thinking that I no longer was king.
So you might have been a
So
bit
I was
of a
feeling
loser.
pretty depressed. So and like a bit of a loser, even though I was richer than I had been before. I wish at the time, when I think back to it, that I'd known what the Royal Bank was going to be trading at in August of 2025 as opposed to 1996. I would have felt a lot better. When I look at things, people talk about we have our banking system and we're lucky. We've had good regulation. We've got really a government consensus. I mean, we can whine a bit, and we do about things not going perfectly for us in regulatory discussion. But this consensus is very important, and we have a globally strong Canadian bank system. I mean, we have 5 banks in the top 50 banks in the world. I mean, give your head a shake. It's just almost impossible to have that. And I'm sure there are some consequences of it in terms of oligopolies and all the other things in terms of the margin. But as Rick points out, in 2007, 8, and 9, we had, we lost less than any other banking system in the world. Our stocks went down, but we had the most market cap left. And it's really a success story. And I do think that universal banking was a major part in continuing it. It got started while all the other banks in the world seemed to have all their consolidation in later in the 20th century. We had it in the beginning of the
80s and
20th
90s,
century,
yeah.
and it's really worked for the banks.
I want to make sure that we get some questions from the audience, if there are any. Yes.
Thank you for two wonderful speakers. I actually, from the independent side, I run an independent asset management firm in Canada. So I have a question about, you guys talk about the benefit of having a universal banking system, which provides a lot of stability to our financial system, which is great. But also, how do you think about a balance between having the stability versus the innovation? Especially right now, the U.S. is striving for, they're going to become the global capital of crypto, and which drives a lot of talents and capital to the States. So how does Canada stay competitive in this kind of environment?
And the question, I'm not sure if you heard at the back, but it's with respect to innovation going forward, especially given really the concentration that we have in the banking system today. Are we going to be innovative enough to go forward and compete internationally?
Well, I think our history, first of all, says yes. And whether it's ATM machines or off-site administrative centers, it's there. And the first line of defense is profitability, capitalization. The second, and it's a little bit, and I wanted to bring it up, is we've had good regulation. Because of getting into the little bank, that's when OSFI got going. So I, as a pretty private sector, what's good for the shareholder, whether it be innovation or continuing profits, I'm an advocate for good, sound regulation. And I think with OSFI, when it got going in that little bank, for example, it was just a piece of paper at that time. So good regulation. There's things to sort out between provincial and whatever, so you've got to, again, we take deposits. One big difference, two differences really. We take deposits. We are a deposit-taking institution. Secondly, we have tended, because we've had high capital, whatever, we've kept most of the business on our books. We didn't securitize. And we won't get, this is a story into itself. But we didn't have, we had our assets on our books, we had that. So when we went into crisis, we could satisfy regulators that it was safe. I remember, in the Harper days and Flaherty days when we had that crisis, and it'll be in this green book. But the fact that we all sat together in a room, the 6 CEOs with the regulators, Carney was in the room at that time, as he's told everybody, and so was Tiff, the central bank. So to get to the creativity and independence, this is a fairly unique structure in the world that's worked. And so, we have we have 6 chartered banks. We're as competitive as hell. It's a competitive oligopoly. But it also gives us the money to invest in our centers and with technology. I guess it was Canada Trust that had the best ATMs. And I was quite happy to say, well, we'll just follow the other banks in ATMs. It's important to be number one and get the technology, and you make some big money. But after that, if you're a quick follower and just whatever, I'm starting to ramble now, but it was a good question and whatever. So I don't worry as long as we have good regulation. I don't worry as long as we're profitable and give a good return to our shareholders. I was under tremendous pressure in the 2008 crisis to issue securities, to issue stock. We never did, other than for an acquisition. So our motto is unique, and I'll leave it at that.
I'll let you answer that after cocktails. I want to make sure that we have one more question here before we break for our next guest.
Mr. Winograd mentioned the October 19th, 1987 crash, which I remember very well because I was working at Scotiabank then. And I believe that when the Bank of Nova Scotia bought McLeod Young Weir, there was a material adverse change clause in the purchase price. And I just wonder if there can be any comment at all about how the reduction in the price paid was received.
I guess, and I wasn't in the room when that one, I wasn't part of the discussion, but I do know Mr. Ritchie, I always call him Mr. Ritchie, that we still paid multiples of book value. Multiples of book value. Okay, the $400 million we paid to McLeod was, I don't know, again, and the books and whatever, but that was in there. And of course, as I said, at that time too, not only the dealer got its independence and whatever, it got access to our AAA security. So we were AAA. So we guaranteed access to subordinated debt or to whatever's going in, and so it was a win-win. I think the dealer got the better part of the deal, and this is not a negative comment, it just is what it is. But I think we paid a premium twice, but in the long run, it's we're getting it back.
I think Charles?
I mean, I wasn't around,
No.
but
Did they pay
around
enough-
that.
did we pay enough for Rich
Basically,
Green?
these deals, like almost every M&A deal that ever get done, seem very expensive, and the ones that work out don't in the long term, and the ones that don't work out don't. And at least in all of the deals that got done, it worked out. When you look at the overall benefit from what went on from an acquisition standpoint in the banks, we always overpaid for our acquisitions and somehow escaped unscathed.
Yes.
Because financial assets have grown now. I always say that had rates gone to from 2 to 18 in my career as opposed to 18 to 2, I wouldn't have done as well.
I believe we have time for one more question. Yes, sir. Is that right? Oh. Sorry.
I outlined just the wonderful features of our Canadian banking system. It's high returning and so stable, but why did every Canadian bank feel the need to go outside of Canada in search for, returns, and how has that worked out for all the banks?
You
what
can take
was the
that.
question? Because I
why
took on
did
my hearing aid.
Why did the Canadian banks,
Feel the need to go outside.
why did they have to go outside of Canada to build their platform?
Well, there are 3 reasons: scale, scale, and scale. Like you could only, if you take a look at our bank's market cap and divided by population, it's a fright. And that you just can't run the size of banks that we have on this population. But, and the U.S. is a golden market, and effectively, it's how how you, in fact, make a big score. And it's just too tempting. It's true for all of the Canadian companies. You just can't do it on the scale of size we have in this country.
Do you think, I'm going to ask one last question because it's kind of intrigued me with Mr. Trump, who, who knows what's on his mind today or tomorrow, but with respect to allowing Canada to open up its borders more to Canadian banking. They are allowed. We're only a country of 40 million people. I mean, I don't think they want us anyway, but do you think that's going to come up in the USMCA or free trade discussions over the next 6 months?
It might, and it would be, it might. I mean, I just don't know how you'd come and attack as a big bank the retail system in Canada, which is the one they can't, they seem to think they can't attack.
Yeah.
And expect to get that much out of it, except for a very long time. But it would hurt the stock price, and my kids would be unhappy.
Rick, would you agree?
Yeah, I had a city tried it with Mercantile and whatever in the past, and it didn't work out. But the net benefit is really not there to do them. And that's why we had to go, the Canadian banks had to go external because, we were on the scale of things, although we're G7 or G8 now or whatever. You've got to grow to get a good return on your equity, and you've got to grow. And so for us, our alternatives is whether it was the U.S., and I never liked really the U.S., okay? And we never got a branch. TD did it. Royal went down in South Carolina and all, whatever. And if you look at the success of Canadian banks in going to the States, it ain't all that good. Okay, I mean, a lot of smart banks have tried and it ain't all that good. So we had a different strategy. We went to every country needs a good bank, a safe bank. So so we did the 50 other countries, the Caribbean, Central America, whatever, and that's again read Howard's book. And I remember doing deals with IMF, where IMF required a foreign bank to provide a good bank for the country. Well, we were the only foreign bank. Okay, so it was strategical thinking and whatever. But every Canadian bank has made, and some better than others, but they, and we'll have to see, yeah.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.